you're stressed out, you feel bloated. If you feel bloated, you feel crappy in yourself, low mood, irritable, really sluggish, and then you're really stressed trying to figure out why you're bloated. And then the stress about the bloating is causing more bloating, and the bloating is causing more stress. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle.
But just having an awareness around what happens to the different systems in the body can be beneficial.
That it's a lot of women will suffer more from autoimmune disease.
Imbalanced hormones come from an imbalanced lifestyle.
If I can just get through this period, I can see the break at the end of it, but they don't see the impact of the compounding stress.
In these energy dumps, I'm absolutely shattered.
Good digestion is really important for good hormonal health.
Stress doesn't directly balance it. That's not what it does. But as you can see from everything here, it can make it very, very hard.
Like your body cannot digest food when it's like in this kind of stressed out state.
80% of the stress is managed with the first 20%.
Hey there, and welcome to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you're passionate about staying fit, healthy, and mentally sharp, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Matt Cooney, and each week we dive into the latest trends, expert insights, and actionable tips to help you take your fitness, nutrition, and mental well-being to the next level. Ready to level up your health and fitness? Let's jump in and get started.
I don't get nervous anymore with the countdown. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Future Fitness Lifestyle. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a full house. If you can see us on the screen, you'll see we're all here. You've joined us this week after last week. It was very well done that you actually, the topic was on stress and there was no stress about it.
Yeah, last week I woke up at 7 a.m. The podcast we were meant to be recording at 7. I was like, nope.
Your stress management was good.
Yeah.
And right, so how I asked this on Instagram, how has everyone's stress been the last week, rated from 0 to 10? We'll go Sharon first, we'll go this way.
I'm going to say 4, generally. Yeah, 4.
Or Eve, sorry, I called you Steve.
I would say at the start of last week, probably like 7, 8, but now I'm definitely like a 4 as well.
Tommy?
Right now, I would say my emotional and psychological stress is quite low, quite relaxed. My physical stress is probably at like 6.5, 7, because I have a bit of a back problem, so there's a bit of stress lying around there somewhere.
You are running the marathon soon.
Yeah.
Ro, how about you?
I was going to say 4 as well, if we take the last week into account.
So we're basically 4 is the magic number today. I think we're between 4 and 7. So not bad. I think that's right in the middle. So what we're going to do today, last week, just to kind of recap, we talked all about stress and essentially what is it, the stress response. This week, we're going to go into kind of the effects of stress and the effects it has on the body, different systems, and then we're going to kind of do a little bit of nerdy stuff, but we're going to bring it all back around to kind of more the practical side of things. So last week we talked kind of about the stress response, and I went through kind of examples of, say, Eve if she was having anxiety, if Tommy was training in the gym, if Sharon was stuck in traffic, and I think myself like stubbing my toe. So again, different situations, but the body, again, the stress response in the body is the same, but what differs is with the stress response is how frequent it is, how long it is, and how severe. And that's where we start to see some of the maybe negatives around stress is when it becomes chronic. So I'm going to talk about stress and the effects it has on all the different systems in the body. And then we'll kind of just have a discussion on each one. So firstly, credit to Luke Lehman, who is the person I got this kind of template from. I think he called it like, if you know Luke Lehman, he's the owner of Muscle Nerds, pretty much a genius with like severe ADHD. When he talks about a topic, he's very, very smart. So he essentially did I think he called it a brain fart of stress and kind of what happens in the body. And he made this kind of mind map, which we're going to kind of run through. And it starts in, I think the reason why this is important, you don't really have to understand this all in detail, but just having an awareness around what happens to the different systems in the body can be beneficial, because it can help you sometimes to understand like why certain things are happening to you, And as we go through it, you're going to probably go like, oh yeah, that makes sense now why I was feeling like that, or this was happening to me maybe in a previous stressful situation. So the first kind of system place we're looking at is the liver and the kidneys. So what happens here is you're going to get an increase in blood pressure. You're going to get impaired detoxification, so the ability to actually detoxify, get waste, get everything out, which then can actually increase your toxicity, which, because again, the body's not detoxifying properly, those pathways aren't working efficiently. Then what happens is you can have an impaired hormone function. So this is where a lot of people will talk about like having imbalanced hormones. I always look at it from this way, like imbalanced hormones come from an imbalanced lifestyle. The hormones are messengers. They're just giving messages around the body that they get from the brain. They don't essentially want to be imbalanced. It's just because of the messages, the signals that the brain has been getting over a long, long period of time has then made these hormones to become imbalanced. So I think that's really important too, because again, hormones is can be like a hot topic, especially on like social media, and can be quite difficult to understand. So when you hear snippets, you can easily get kind of confused, so it's important to kind of understand that. And I think what you'll notice is as we go through this stuff is like it all kind of links in. So any points on that or anything that stuck out to them?
Something stuck out to me when you were talking about it was like how stress affects the liver and the kidneys as is. And maybe some people's like stress response when the weekend comes, maybe they've had a stressful week, is maybe they might have alcohol as maybe a coping mechanism. So the liver and the kidneys maybe might be already impaired, and then they're making it harder. So it's actually increasing the physical stress and making it harder. And then the lack of water, that their response to the stress might be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. It's that like kick them while they're down, It's like they're already down and then they throw alcohol on liver and a kidney that already can't detoxify, it already is toxic. And that's where again you get the short-term benefit of maybe the release of stress for that like 10 minutes that you feel, or that time that you're drinking, and then the next day it's 10 times worse, and it's like you said, Sharon, imagine that compounded over 6 months. If that's every weekend, what you could be doing to yourself, it's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and I think it makes perfect sense what you were talking about, having imbalanced hormones as a result of an imbalanced lifestyle. Because, as you said, they're simply just messages that are being sent around the body from obviously the brain and the gut. So there's obviously so many things that can impact our hormonal levels, and I'm definitely not one to speak into that because I wouldn't have too much background in that. I'm sure you guys talk a lot more on it, but it obviously makes it makes sense that if you're someone who's is walking around at a scale of 9 or a 10 of a stress level, then it's going to have some sort of an impact on your hormones, which of course your hormones affect so many different areas of your body: mood, digestive system, respiratory system, your sleep cycle. So you can see the domino effect that stress is having in relation to your hormones and that.
Yeah, I always look at the hormones like I always imagine it because the messages, like your WhatsApp, right? Imagine your WhatsApp just started constantly getting these messages from all these random people, want all this stuff going on. Like your head would be absolutely fried, right? You'd be like, get me, I'm just deleting WhatsApp. Unfortunately, you can't just delete your hormones, but that's essentially in a way what's going on. Brain is having so many messages, it's getting confused. It's like, do I use this? Do I not? So it's like, do I text this person back? What do I do? Who is this person texting me? And it just creates chaos. So that's kind of what's going on, to give probably a poor analogy. And I think you said it would it kind of leads into the next area, which is the pancreas, or like your blood sugar. So what can happen is you become insulin resistant. So insulin, again, is a hormone. It's like a carrier, carries glucose, say, to the cell. What happens when you get resistant is it has an inability to do that. So what happens then is you look at it like a door. It's like when you're insulin resistant, the insulin comes up, knocks on the door, nobody's answering. When you're insulin sensitive, they answer, they take in all the stuff that you're bringing. So when you're resistant, nobody's home. And then what happens is you have to then go back into essentially it goes back into the bloodstream and it just stays there. And that can create what's called like hyperinsulinemia, which essentially is just a lot more insulin in the bloodstream, which can be associated with a lot of kind of diseases. So I think type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, heart disease, and this is even obesity. And one thing, just a side note on this actually, is why exercise and weight training can be so beneficial, especially weight training, is it can help increase insulin sensitivity. So again, it helps the body to be able to transport that stuff. And again, that's where you don't want all this in the bloodstream. You want it to go to where it needs to go. So that's one reason why exercise weight training is the king. There's the whole list. But what can happen as well here is there's an increase in what's called GLUT1, which is essentially our brains need glucose to run off, and GLUT1 is insulin independent. So basically it means it can transport the goods without the need for insulin. But what happens is when you then rely on it because you're becoming insulin resistant, it then can like basically impair, it's working too much. It has too much to do. And then that can actually impair your energy production. And it can also result, what people will relate to here, is in these energy dumps. So again, if you've everybody's experienced this really stressful period, you get through it, you're running on a high, and then like it's over and you're like, I'm absolutely shattered. That's what's kind of happening. Even after a hard leg day, that's what pops into my head. I'm like, after it, you're done. As soon as that last set is done. And also a lot of people here, I think we mentioned it last week, after stressful periods. So think of like teachers, this happens to a lot, or people who are working on deadlines. Unfortunately for teachers, what happens is once they get to a holiday, they get to the holidays, survive it, and then they're absolutely shattered for the first couple of days of the holiday. And that's essentially what is happening, is like that kind of aftermath. And so that's kind of the blood sugar pancreas kind of response. I presume all of us can kind of relate to the energy dumps after the stressful periods.
Yeah, definitely can relate, I think, especially, and like what you were saying there as well with like teachers and that. Like I see it with so many of my clients, coming up to the end of term. It's just so stressful in school. There's, a lot of extra work that has to be done for the holidays. And then when they get to their midterm break, they end up sick or they end up run down and they're absolutely shattered. Like they're basically just running on adrenaline for that last like couple of days leading up to it. And then once they finally take that break, it just all hits them. And yeah, I definitely think even for myself, like going through more stressful periods of work, like when you have that little bit of a break, then yourself, I kind of happened to me before where I went away on holidays and I was just like so on edge for the first 3 days of the holidays. I couldn't actually relax. I couldn't switch off. And even like, I was kind of really like, how do you describe it? I was like really on edge, like really jumpy all the time and just wasn't able to like fully enjoy myself. Was constantly like just in my head, quite anxious and stuff. And then I kind of realized after it, I was like, okay, maybe I was just like very overly stressed going into that holiday, and it all kind of just caught up with me then.
Ro, did you get a stress response there when your camera just fell?
Yeah, my freaking light just fell.
I heard something and then I see that on the screen. I was like, whoa.
I think what you're saying, Matt, too, is a lot of people have just that perception that if it's kind of like a statement in their head, it's like, if I can just get through this period, I can see the break at the end of it, but they don't see the impact of the compounding stress over that period of time where their tolerance is just completely gone way over their baseline, and it's trying to get them to see that if you actually keep continuing this way, you might not even make it to that holiday or By the time that holiday comes around, as you said, you won't even be able to fully relax because you've actually done a lot of damage to yourself. And it's not about like, I just need to get through this period. It's like, okay, well, what can I do to help obviously regulate myself, and obviously bringing in stress management techniques right now to support me, rather than just thinking that I have to get through this period doing the same things that I have been doing, which have caused me to feel so stressed.
I was probably definitely guilty of doing that before. It's like, you know, if I had a holiday or something coming up, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be taking a break here. So I'm going to actually go even harder, work more, and like just literally run myself more into the ground. And then you get like that, you get on the holidays, like, I'm actually either sick or you get that energy dump for a couple of days, and then you're nearly angry at yourself. You're like, oh, I have time off now, but I'm absolutely wrecked, you know.
I actually had a conversation about... Go on, Ro.
I was just going to say, I think also a lot of people don't realize like how much their body is communicating with them. And that when they do get sick, they don't put it to the stress. They don't realize, they're just like, oh, it's, you know, it's normal to be getting sick around this time of year or blah, blah, blah. When in actual fact, it's their body telling them. Our bodies are so smart and they're constantly communicating with us. But just so many of us don't realize, don't put two and two together when we do get sick, that like there's probably stuff we can do to prevent this. So I think that's also important to touch on.
Yeah, I think with what you're saying there, Roisin, like, and getting run down and sick, like, obviously, you know, most people will end up getting run down and sick a couple of times across the year, but like a lot of people will look at, okay, why does this keep happening? And, you know, you could have the absolutely 100% perfect optimal diet, be really fit, active, you know, have all of those things in place, but if you're chronically stressed, you know, you're missing those key inputs. And it doesn't matter how good your diet is, like that stress is going to weaken your immune system. You're going to be more susceptible to getting sick and run down. And it just has such a huge impact.
Sharon, you were going to mention.
Yeah, no, something I was going to say, just with, you know, you were saying, Matt, like you were saying, okay, I have a break coming up, so I'm going to work really hard coming up to that break. But we actually had a conversation about this yesterday, me and Rosemary in work, and we were chatting about, like, I don't know, do you remember when you were younger and if you wanted to go somewhere, that you'd be like cleaning the house, you'd be doing everything that needed to be done in order to be able to go away and or to go to town or do whatever you wanted to do. And that was like the way we were when we were younger, and we were chatting about how it's nearly like a little bit how it is now. You know, we still have that maybe mentality a little bit in the background that, oh, if we want to go away, we want to enjoy ourselves, that we need to like do extra. So maybe it's just that little piece of people think that they have to do so much before they deserve that break or before they deserve the switch off.
Yeah,
and it's,
but that's because
go ahead, Ro.
Because that's because like it's been ingrained in us that like we have to work to get a reward. There has to be a lot of effort kind of put in before we get a reward, and I think that's ingrained in all of us. I just pictured like me and Eve, like I always clean the apartment before I go anywhere. Like the morning of the flight, I'll be like hoovering, mopping, cleaning the whole place. But then I'm like, oh, it's for future me to come home to like a nice place.
Definitely.
That's definitely an O'Keefe thing. You got it from your mother, I think.
I think I do it because I'm really anxious about flying. So I'm just like panic cleaning, keep myself distracted.
Eve also does that before we get a cleaner as well. I think Tommy, we had a conversation about this before. Like, the person is coming to do the job, but you're doing the job for them. We actually moved out of an apartment before, and the landlord texted and was like, why did you clean it so much? We pay like cleaners to come in and clean it. And I'm like, that's. So you mentioned it, Eve, about the immune system being impaired and even about having the perfect diet. And that's the next system, which is obviously, well, no, it's really interesting to me, but maybe because I'm weird, but is the gut and the immune system. So what can happen under high stress is what's called intestinal permeability, but essentially this is called leaky gut. So what happens with chronic stress, it can loosen basically the gut lining, which is responsible for absorbing all the nutrients, and it's also responsible for like blocking toxins, pathogens, or any undigested food that enters the bloodstream. So what happens here is you can actually then your ability to absorb nutrients goes down because it's impaired, you're not absorbing them properly. You can actually, again, if things get past that, that's where this is like those toxins, pathogens, whatever, they get into the digestive system. That can create a big kind of inflammatory response. And this also, like down the line, it's kind of the start of a lot of autoimmunity, so a lot of autoimmune conditions. And this is where digestion is a huge thing. And so many people, it's always the first question I ask, and it's not always the answer, but I would bet majority of the time when people are talk about, oh, my digestion is really poor, usually stress is high. And a lot of people, the first thing they turn to is food. They're like, oh, I can't, when I eat this, digestive system goes crazy, whatever it is. I always like ask the question, I'm like, is it the food you're consuming, or is it the system the food is going into? Because a lot of the time it's the system. Even if the food isn't the best food to consume, if the system is functioning efficiently, it's probably going to be able to handle it. And you'll notice this, I've seen this example quite a few times, like people who go on holidays, then their digestion is perfect on holidays. And like, they're not eating salads most of the time. But why, when you look at why is that, it's like literally when the plane hits the ground, their brain is like, I'm on holidays. Stress doesn't exist. Life, go ahead. And then all of a sudden their digestion is, I've seen this like so many times in the past. And then it's just super interesting, because I think with digestion, it's such a huge topic and rabbit hole. But I really think people, like we said, when you're in fight or flight mode, like you're trying to get away from a tiger. Digesting your food isn't really the priority. Surviving is. So, and then when you kind of look at what I mentioned with kind of leaky gut and all these things getting into the digestive system, digestive tract, it's all setting off this huge inflammatory response, which again is long-term can cause havoc with the digestive system. Any thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm in school here this morning. I'm writing notes. The two things that came up to me just when you were talking about that, Matt, was when you were saying about like stress and impairing the gut, and like how it has how it can cause autoimmune. And I remember reading somewhere that it's a lot of women will suffer more from autoimmune disease. And again, they had that kind of that backing behind it of like the high stress, the taking on maybe too much. I can't remember where I read it, but I remember reading it and thinking, Jesus, that's really interesting. But also as well with kind of gut health and like impaired digestion. When digestion is off, obviously with leaky gut, like the toxins are going to be around your body, but if your digestion is off, you can't excrete toxins and the bad things that need to get out your body properly. And good digestion is really important for good hormonal health, because it takes all the excess hormone out of your body that doesn't need to be there. So again, like your gut health is going to be linked back to your hormone health as well, essentially. And you think even like in around your cycle, how your digestion goes, and then after a couple of days, it comes back to normal and you start to feel better again. So if that like digestion is off, you're not feeling good in yourself.
And it kind of links in with what we've already, like you said, what we talked about with even the liver and the kidneys, the detoxification being impaired. So you can't excrete the stuff. And then if there's these pathogens, toxins getting through the gut lining, we can't get them out either. So it's just, again, they're just sitting there. And then, as we know, with the gut as well, like gut is responsible for a lot of the hormones we produce. Tommy, did you say last week, like serotonin as well, which is responsible for our mood? So again, when people are having really bad gut issues, like they're not the happiest people in the world. None of us are. It will have that effect on our mood, And then the thing is, if we're not absorbing our nutrients either, that's going to have an effect on, again, your energy. Your body's just not getting you're not getting. So it's all it all kind of starts to link into each other, and that's where like the inflammation side of it, again, when your body comes inflamed, and we'll all know what that feels like when you're like really bloated and inflamed as well. It's inflammation is actually, it's not even a bad thing either. It's just it's when it becomes chronic, and it's just your body's way to try to protect itself against the harm that's going on. And this is where digestive issues can go on for so long, because you imagine that those toxins and that, they can't get out, they're stuck in there. So it's like it's this constant thing. So that's where, and even like from us talking about this, it's where it can get so complicated. And I think people on sometimes social media try and sell you a dream of like, take some apple cider vinegar. It's like, yeah, that's not just going to solve everything we just talked about, with this one little potion or something. Maybe they will someday. I do feel like somebody is trying to create the solution, but right now it's unfortunately not that simple.
But yeah, what you were saying there as well about like taking this one thing to kind of solve it, but like when people do go to the doctors with like poor digestion, the doctor will never bring up stress. Usually not. Like you'll get like very generic advice like, are you drinking water? Are you eating enough fiber? X, Y, and Z. But like stress is probably never going to be mentioned. And I would actually go as far as saying that 9 out of 10 digestive issues are linked back to stress. Like it's always back to stress.
Should be.
It's always the number one thing. And something else you were kind of touching on there as well. I think it happens with a lot of women, especially, obviously, seem to get more affected by bloating. And I think that's kind of like what Sharon was talking back to earlier. But what happens then with women is, especially obviously you're stressed out, you feel bloated. If you feel bloated, you feel crappy in yourself, low mood, irritable, really sluggish. And then you're really stressed trying to figure out why you're bloated. And then the stress about the bloating is causing more bloating, and the bloating is causing more stress. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. And even like for myself in the past, like years ago, I would have had like really, really bad digestion. And like I tried every single thing. I tried everything online. I tried cutting out everything out my diet. I tried strictest things. And the more I was overanalyzing every little thing, the more stressed I was getting about it. And the worse my digestion was. Like I just looked like I was pregnant, swollen with bloating. Like, and the answer was manage my stress.
And as well, this is why me and Tommy we should be very lucky sitting here, Tommy. It's like you guys can do all the right things, and just because of the natural fluctuations in hormones that us men don't have across 4 weeks, or you could just be bloated. And then if you're trying to figure it out, but it's like you're trying to figure out something that you never really figure, you're probably better off actually just go with it instead of fighting against it in that situation. So there's so many, it becomes this cycle that is like, can be very difficult to manage. And especially then.
Like something, linking it all in. I think obviously it's such a massive issue for a lot of our clients, and not just our clients, but probably the general population, is the way people eat their food. People are eating their food in stressful situations, which means their sympathetic nervous system is activated. A lot of people eat their food on the go. They eat their food because they're rushing, eating their food because they're trying to get the kids ready. They're eating their food, they're looking at their phone, they're not actually being present with their food. One of the primary functions of the parasympathetic nervous system is to engage our digestive system. And the majority of people who are in that sympathetic state are eating their food in a highly stressful state. So they're anxious, as I said, they're worrying, they're thinking about something else, all while they're meant to be doing this process while in a very calm state. And like myself, I'm definitely guilty of it myself. I'm totally not free of that, but the more that I do try and take time to sit down and to actually look at my food and just be like, okay, check in with myself before I'm eating, like, what's happening right now? Can I actually really enjoy this food while knowing that I'm not in a very stressful place? Because as you all said, the impact it has on your digestive system, the cramps, the feeling irritable, which, we've all experienced. And like I said, I'm definitely guilty of. Big thing for me is probably like if I'm in a rush, I'm rushing to kind of get back to work on that. And I'm just like not taking my time with my food. I'm thinking about having to get back to work. And it's in those little moments where if you can just take a second to just check in with yourself and just be like, okay, give myself 5 minutes or 10 minutes to just relax and eat my food. It's going to have such a major influence on how I'm going to feel for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. Oh, we're all talking.
That's something I started, especially this year as well, mindful eating, because also chewing, we should be chewing our food so much to help it digest in our gut. Something, I don't know who said this, someone told me this ages ago, but like if you look at a cow and how much a cow chews their food, and they've got 4 stomachs, and so many of us literally take 2 bites and swallow it, when we should be actually like being a lot more mindful and chewing more, and then like getting up and doing a little bit of movement after you eat a big meal. They're like 2 things I'm really bringing into this year.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying there as well, like when we're talking about stress being like probably the number one reason that people have digestive issues, but I'd say eating environment would be probably the second biggest reason that people have digestive issues. And like that, people that are eating on the go, running out the door, sitting down to a meal, wolfing it back as quick as possible, or even, working and eating at their desk while they're typing an email. Like your body cannot digest food when it's like in this kind of stressed out state. And it's just so important to, even if it's just 10 minutes, just allow yourself that 10 minutes to move away from your desk, take a couple of deep breaths, calm down your nervous system, and then the food you eat will digest so much better. And like it just has such a huge impact. And I see that with so many people. And especially, I know obviously a lot of people will have jobs where, their lunch break might have to, they might only have a couple of minutes. But what I usually get people to do is like, if you're not able to take a full lunch break and you only have like 5 or 10 minutes, then you're much better off having like something small that's easy to digest, like, a yogurt or protein shake or something kind of semi-solid like that, and then waiting until you actually have time to sit down and enjoy a meal, not kind of rushing that meal. Because again, even if you're dieting and you're eating your lunch in 2 minutes, you're probably not going to feel full or satisfied from that. You probably won't even remember eating it. You'll be hungry 5 minutes later, and then you're more likely to not stick to your diet.
What is that piece of advice? Don't eat like don't eat a 600 calorie meal until you have time. Don't be rushing this big large volume meal in 5 minutes, wolfing it down.
Yeah, you'll end up.
I've actually not fixed, but I think guys are worse in my experience for just wolfing food. Like I've had so many times people have come to me, they're like, even in a check-in, being like, my digestion is so poor. And I'm like, I know by looking at you, you don't even know what food you eat. You like, it's already eaten. I'm like, take your time. And then literally they come back next week, they're like, oh yeah, my digestion is perfect. All you had to do.
It's a boy thing.
Actually, yeah, just chew your food. Who was it? Was it Barry? Barry was in Marbella with us, I think, last year or whatever. I just remember looking, I was like, Barry, I think the plate had barely gotten down. He'd finished it. I'm like, that's not even possible to eat that fast. Mm-hmm. You need to slow down. I couldn't. So it's like, yeah. And it's so simple, but it's honestly so effective. Like there's so many things you'll see to help with digestion, but a lot of them are the easy.
It was in Joanna Harry's last book on Ozempic and that, when he went to Japan because he was trying to understand the different cultures around eating and that. I think it was some scientist said to him that like you're meant to spend like up to like 30-40 minutes. Let's say if you had like a dinner plate in front of you, it's meant to take you like between like 30-40 minutes, as Roisin said, properly chew every single piece of food that you put into your mouth. Now obviously that's taking it very extreme. I'm not going to sit there for 30-40 minutes or longer eating like a meal. I'm just not. But he did say that, yeah, that's like kind of the process that you should follow, is that once you put something into your mouth, chew it, allow it to go down through your digestive system, take a break, and then go back to the food. But definitely the way our society is built right now, our impulses is just once that delicious food taste comes into your mouth, it's just like, I want more.
I think it's also to do with growing up. If you grew up in a big family as well, because a lot of time it was like when the food was down, if you didn't eat it quick enough, it was gone and somebody else had it. And so that mentality of like eating it faster. But I've even noticed like eating with different cultures, or since I've been traveling, like some people eat so slow, and it's like, you know, you put your fork and knife down, like Tommy was saying, you wait, and then you have to re-pick up your fork and knife. Like the act of like putting it down in between each bite kind of slows down the process. Or eating with chopsticks.
Something I remember Eve, you said to me a long time ago, approaching that, eat with a smaller spoon.
Yeah,
that little tool was like an absolute like lifesaver. It makes such a difference.
Food lasts so much longer.
Like we won't eat with big spoons. It's weird.
I ask for
I
like
never
a
ever
coffee
use a big spoon,
and they're like,
no.
For what? And I'm like, to eat with, and they're like, they get me a big spoon. I'm like, no, I want like a tiny spoon.
Eve, is it right that you're meant to take 30 chews per bite?
Something like that.
Like 20 times. I think it's 20 times, but I think that's a bit overkill.
Yeah, your jaw would be killing you.
Just
but
chew until
Tommy,
it's semi-solid.
Yeah, you said it there as well. Is it in one of the blue zones, Osaka? Is it Osaka? Is that the place? They have two of their kind of rituals. One is basically, it's called, there's some type of Chinese name on it, but it's like eating to 80% full. All the time. It's one of their. It's actually in their religion or culture, and alongside that, I think it's them as well. They take like 30 to 40 minutes. They eat as a family together, and obviously, they use chopsticks as well, so they eat slowly. And it's like no wonder they're one of the healthiest, live the longest, in the world. So it's
eating.
Everybody to take away from this. Small spoons, chopsticks from now on. No more utensils, only chopsticks and small spoons.
Chew your food.
Eating till you're 80% full is like, you don't know you're 80% full on like that. You have to eat slowly to notice that. Because we're all probably guilty of it. When you eat a plate of dinner, you finish it and then you're like, afterwards you're like, oh my God, I'm like so stuffed, because your body hasn't even got to the feeling of full because you ate it so fast. That it's only like 10 or 15 minutes after the meal that you're like, fuck, why did I should have stopped it, So that's why it's good to eat slower, but easier said than done.
That's why it takes like 20 minutes for the signal, I think, from the gut to the brain to kind of register as full. So like if you imagine within that 20 minutes, you could consume like another 1,000 calories probably before that it gets the signal, So again, that's why eating slower, being mindful definitely is a winner. I have two more areas or systems I want to kind of go through, and then we'll kind of round it all up. So the next one is the thyroid. So with stress, your thyroid can kind of downregulate. Basically, the conversion of like T4 to T3 can become impaired, and it can actually just end up in you having more of a like sluggish metabolism, essentially. And that's where, I'll come to it in a minute, but it's not that your metabolism is broken, anything like that. It's just down regulating to help with the stress that it's under. But again, coming for like, if you're then metabolism down regulating, you're going to be burning less total calories. If you come back to fat loss, it's going to be a lot harder. Again, it's much easier to overeat. So that's thyroid. The brain is the next one. So some of the things with stress is going to be short-term memory loss, which you mentioned last week, Tommy. Neurodegeneration and essentially cognitive and motor decline, and become clumsy, forget things, fatigue, anxiety, depression, and all those essentially are going to make compliance a lot harder to any type of plan that you're on. And this kind of leads into the physique then.
I'm trying not to laugh.
Why?
I don't know.
I saw you laughing. I was like, what is going on?
You think
is it
short-term memory loss, fatigue, anxiety, depression, you think that's funny? So
I'm just going to say, and I know it's on for next week's talk, but Eve is like manifesting a stress management technique, because supposedly when we smile, it activates the the vagus nerve. So
yeah, laughter.
That's one way of relaxing and calming yourself is obviously having a laugh and smiling.
Maybe that was it. You were feeling stressed even. You just had to laugh it off. That was it. So if we kind of round this off and look at the physique, what this can essentially do is lead to more body fat gain, loss of lean body mass, so losing muscle, loss in strength as well, which is going to kind of, again, if you're not getting stronger or you're getting weaker, you're more inclined to lose muscle mass. Then when we look at kind of a diet, but I suppose if we look at what do we need to make progress when it comes to our physique, whether it's losing body fat, building muscle, it's going to be consistency and adherence. And here's the thing, you're under high stress, your appetite is going to be dysregulated. So I say dysregulated because some people actually have an increased appetite under stress, and others, there's something called appetite-induced suppression. You'll notice that some people actually, when they are chronically stressed, they don't eat and they lose weight. Majority tend to overeat or get hungrier, but there is a percentage that go the other way. But that's going to increase your cravings, again, which is going to be for sugar, not broccoli. Your body's ability to burn fat is not the same. Again, you're trying to survive, get away from a tiger, not burn body fat. That's the priority. Your NEAT actually can go down. So this is the amount you move outside of training. That can actually, with high stress, can just go down subconsciously without you even knowing it. And again,
you're just like dragging yourself around.
Yeah. A lot of that is you being fatigued from just not having the energy because, again, you're running away from a tiger most of the day. And then you're going to have those energy dumps then, which, again, stress hormones, adrenaline. Then you have the dump. Very hard when your energy's up and down all day. Nutrient deficiencies, disrupted sleep, poor recovery from training, decreased gym performance, your immune system, you can get sick more often, which again stops the consistency. You have an increased risk of injury. Your digestion can be impaired, which is going to affect your mood, which is going to make you irritable, like Eve mentioned, what she was. And then, you can be fatigued. Your metabolism then with thyroid is sluggish. So there's all these things. And this is not to scare people. It's more to understand when somebody says to you, it's just a calorie deficit. Is it? And on top of that, with the consistency and adherence, you can get this inflammation or chronic inflammation, which is going to affect water retention, the number on the scales, which a lot of people freak out about. Well, again, if you're seeing these spikes.
Causing more stress.
Exactly. And it's stress doesn't directly stop fat loss. That's not what it does. But as you can see from everything here, it can make it very, very hard. So that's kind of in a nutshell, I think, all the effects that stress can have.
I think you see with a lot of people then as well, especially with their diet and, when they're really stressed, that's when they're picking, snacking, they're really hungry or they're kind of overeating or turning to chocolate and, using food as like a coping mechanism. You'd see it then with them kind of coming to you and checking I just need to have more willpower, or I just need to stop snacking, I need to stop raiding the presses. But that's not actually the problem. That's the response to the problem. And the actual problem is you don't have any stress management practices in place. So when you're stressed, you're looking for that quick fix, and food is like that temporary relief. But if you actually look at it, you have the food, then you're likely feeling even more stressed. It's not actually getting to the root cause. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle again. So that's why I think for a lot of people that if you're someone who is regularly overeating, or, if you use food as like a coping mechanism, then it's really important that you kind of look at what you're doing for your stress. And another thing with that is I see so many people saying they don't have time for stress management. And that's when I hear that, I'm just like, okay, everybody has time. We don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to book into a spa every single day of the week. The littlest, just what's the thing you always say, Matt? It's 10% of what is it? I don't know.
Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond.
Yeah, but there was another, he related that to stress, I think, as well. Stress management.
The 80-20 rule of stress management.
Yeah.
the 80% of the stress is managed with the first 20% effort.
Yeah. So even just being like, okay, I'm stressed, I'm going to do this little thing for myself, that can really just have such a huge impact. And it could be 5 minutes reading a book. It could be, going outside, getting some fresh air, bringing a friend, or, could be anything small.
And I think when people hear like, oh, I've to watch my diet, I have to train, and now I have to look after my stress, and it just seems like it's so much extra, when, like Eve said, and I think we'll talk about it more in next week's episode, there is so many little tiny things you can do throughout your day that can help relax your nervous system. Even one thing is, do whatever you're doing today, but just do it 5% slower. Like, slowing down is so beneficial for relaxing your nervous system, and that's going to add like a couple of minutes extra throughout your day.
It's why, like, the type of information that we've given here today is so valuable, because for the vast majority of the population, people are just not aware of how stressed they actually are. And like I see it so much. You ask clients in that simple questions, ask them how you doing, and it's like, I'm grand, and then it's like, okay, you literally give me half an hour, and you've literally just told me you're grand, and now literally half an hour later, you just literally told me that there's so many things going wrong in your life that you just told me that you're grand about. People have just become so conditioned to be in a stressful state, and it's just essentially become their normal because they become so familiar with it, and people just they don't realise the way that it's impacting their daily life. And it's education like this that can have such a big impact on you. Literally listen to these words, you can just be like, oh, maybe that's actually why my digestive system is actually like this. It's because I'm actually really stressed, and I need to actually act on that, rather than just simply going by and doing the same things that I have been doing, which is causing me to have more and more stress, which essentially at the end of it all is just going to cause you to burn out. So it's just checking in with yourself and actually asking yourself the question, where am I at today? And not just saying, yeah, I'm stressed, and then just going on with your daily life and doing the same things that you've always done, which again, we'll go into the things which you should do next week's episode.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And the thing is, like we said last week, the problem with like stress is like kind of like nearly how do you know you're stressed? Because it just becomes normal, you're conditioned to it. But that's where like having an awareness of all this can actually help you, because you might be like, am I stressed? Am I not? I don't know. But then if you look at things and go, okay, like, do I have high cravings for sugar all the time? Do I have these like energy dumps up and down? Am I getting weaker in the gym? Am I getting sick kind of constantly? Do I pick up these niggles, injuries consistently? Am I very irritable all the time? Am I constantly having fatigue? All these things. Is my sleep disrupted? Can I not sleep through the night? All these things are symptoms. And I think Roisin said at the start, it's like, that's your body physically expressing what's going on to try to kind of put its hand up and say like, hey, this is happening. It doesn't just randomly happen. It's because of what's been going on. And again, your body's only just responding to the internal, external environment. And it's just trying to give you these messages to kind of give you an insight to go, yeah, look, something needs to happen. And so I think that's, even for anybody that's listening that maybe is wondering that, it's like, have a kind of nearly a checkbox of everything I said. Like, if you can relate to a lot of it, there's likelihood that you're under quite a bit of stress. And it's about managing it now, which, like we said, is what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So, any final thoughts before we let the people go?
No, I think I have more to say. It's for next week.
Do what Eve did there a few minutes ago. Just keep laughing.
Keep smiling. Keep swimming.
I was going to say, if one of us starts talking, they're probably going to keep going into another topic. So we're going to finish with a nice random question. It's all about stress. No, it's not. What do you, Eve, you can't just laugh at this either, by the way. What do you wish you had spent more time doing when you were young? I have an answer, but I don't want to influence your answers.
I wish I paid more attention in school and applied myself a bit more. Grace has gone to school now, I can say that out loud.
I don't know.
I'm going to say I wish I spent more time sober.
As a child.
As a child.
When I was younger.
I'm going younger. I'm going.
Oh, how
You're
much?
younger.
5-year-old here.
Yeah.
I went teenagers. What
35, just to tell you.
age are you going?
Yeah. I'm
I
going
was
from
thinking
like teenage
0
years.
to 7.
Okay.
You can do that if you want.
Okay, yeah.
I was thankfully sober until
You were
when I was 7. Thank God.
What was the question again? What do you wish you did more of or less of?
Yeah, when you were
Jared,
younger.
I wish I had spent more time down Smoker's Lane.
No, I spent loads of time down there. Up out of it in school is where I wish I went.
I wish you spent more time in school.
Yeah, I wish I applied myself a bit better in school.
Right.
I'm going to say
Who-
I wish I
has
dropped
everyone
physics.
answered?
That was it.
No, Tommy, what did you wish you did? Oh, sorry, what did you say, Eve?
Well, it depends on
It
the
depends
age.
on
I said
the
I wish
age,
I
yeah.
read more books, but probably like you in probably school, I probably wish I spent more time concentrating on school.
I wish I spent
Reading
more time
is what I
checking in on
would like.
myself.
Yeah.
Say that again, Ro.
I said I wish I spent more time checking in on myself. But we've done that now.
Right, guys, thank you for joining us today, and we will catch you next week where we talk all about managing the stress. We now know all about it and its effects, so we need to help you manage it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Future Fitness Lifestyle. If you found value in today's show, please take a moment to leave us a review and share it with someone who could benefit. Every single review or share helps us grow the show and will allow us to keep bringing you more great content. Stay tuned for weekly episodes where we'll be sharing more tips and insights to help you take your health, fitness, and mindset to the next level. Thanks again for joining us, and remember, consistency beats perfection. See you in the next episode.